We have a cast of characters today. So let's start off by introducing a regular. We got KG. KG, say what's up.
What's going on, guys? KG back for another week. Had a little hiatus post New Year's, but I'm back with the bang, ready to go.
Yeah, he's still a little shaken, as you can tell. He has a game tomorrow with with Tottenham. We're definitely gonna discuss that. Um, another family member. We got Rohit. Rohit, say what's going on.
What's up? Bringing the Evertonian perspective to this podcast. It's lacking. It's been lacking for far too long. Hopefully, I'll rectify that.
And last but not least, we got a returning family member. We got Aiden. Aiden, say what's up.
Guys, what's going on? You can't have a podcast unless you have the best team of all time represented. Arsenal forever. Thank you.
Wait, we have a. I'm the Manchester United. You're talking about me, or you? I'm not sure.
Are we talking about Real Madrid? No,
Carry
no,
on. You got to bring yourself into the conversation.
Okay. All right. Well, a lot happened this week, guys. There's a lot that we need to talk about. We need to talk about we have the EPL roundup, the January transfer window that just closed. We also have a lot going on in PSG, and we're going to talk about Messi in a little bit, but we have to start off with a unfortunate incident that happened in Marseille with the fans storming the training grounds, fireworks, flares. There has been some protesting. The owner, Frank McCourt, he's actually saying, well, he's a former LA Dodger owner. He mentioned that it was similar to January 6th storming of the Capitol. KG, what are your thoughts on the events that actually happened in Marseille?
I mean, it's sad to see. It's sad to see where Marseille is as a club. You know, them being one of the larger historic clubs in Ligue 1. But you know, I kind of think this was a long time in the making. You know, when you as an American owner, when you take over something that's like an institution within a country, and you don't follow their historical traditions, and you kind of veer away from, you know, what they have been historically been as a club, you know, these are the type of reactions that you get. And you know, obviously it was the more extreme, or what do they call them,
Ultras.
oh, say again. Ultras, yeah, it was the Marseille Ultras, yeah. And so obviously, like they were the people who led this protest, but at the same time, when you bought the club, you knew that they existed and they held power within the club. And so to ignore them, you know, you kind of you see what happens. You know, I don't necessarily know what the remedy is for this, but you know, the club has their group of supporters, and their supporters feel a certain type of way, and I don't necessarily think that the American owner has done a good job of heeding, you know, the local cries per se to operate in a different fashion. So this is where he ended up.
Well, KG, you touched on a couple of good points there. One was the way how the owner is handling things, but I didn't. Let's talk about the fans. Those guys actually they postponed the Rennes. Hopefully, I'm saying that right. They canceled that game that was supposed to happen on Saturday. Are the fans too powerful in all of this?
I mean, there's always the split between power and influence, and if power is by force or if power is by influence. So in this case, right now, might seems to make right, but that doesn't make it okay necessarily. It kind of reminds you, and it's a very different situation, but it reminds you of interacting players with fans during the game. It's never okay. Fans have a right, I guess, to express themselves, and they'll jaw at what's going on every now and again on the field. But once you cross that line, it damages both, and it hurts the whole institution. So I can understand the expression. At the same time, once you start breaking things and you start moving into violence, it's not okay. And I would say also, just being American and knowing and being awake the last several years, I'm not going to throw stones out of our glass house because we have plenty of our own problems. So I'm not going to point at Marseille or those fans in particular and say something that I can't say about my own country. But it's pretty disgraceful. And at the end of the day, Andre Villas-Boas, he's a young coach, and you've got to think if he was willing to walk away from a contract and willing to basically, I think he said he's willing to walk away with zero. He just wants out. There's got to be something going on with the culture, and the culture starts at the very top.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Rohit.
Well, to touch on that, the Andre Villas-Boas situation, I was reading that he offered his resignation immediately after the events, but the board didn't immediately accept it. They went through this whole process of investigating, doing a 3-day investigation, and then put the blame on him for the club's run of form, and then accepted his resignation, tying back into the whole hoopla of what the heck the ownership and the board is doing. But I think what both KG and Aiden said, I can't really disagree with anything they've stated. I also think it's very much emblematic of where a lot of people feel mentally and emotionally are in the world, because everyone minus New Zealand and Australia, everyone's been pretty much locked up or cooped up. Normal life has been messed up for most people, so they use sports as an outlet to escape. And it's when you have such a historic club, at least in Ligue 1, where they're not performing to the expectations that their fan base has for them, then it was only a matter of time before something was going to happen. I don't think any of us could have predicted that it was going to explode to this level of protest and rioting on the practice pitch. But we can't pretend that this wasn't something that was just completely out of the blue either. I think that would be foolish.
So, and one thing, so I think to add context to kind of what this would the American equivalent would be. Let's say what's historic. Let's say Alabama, for example. Like, let's say they were a private institution, and they were able to be acquired by some Saudi Arabian prince, right? And because whatever rules or laws, they decide that they're going to start changing the football program, and they're pouring more money into the program, but they're changing the way that the program runs. What do you think would be the result of something like that happening in a place like Alabama or the University of Alabama? You probably get an almost identical result. It's not, and I think we have to make sure we provide context to like these football clubs, just because, I mean, in America, like, that's the closest thing that I could probably equate to the passionate support of a sporting team is college football, just because the level of support is a lot more local. It's a lot more, vicinity based, and that would be if that's something like that happened, it wouldn't surprise me.
KG, well, not even KG, Aiden. These guys, they were second last year in Ligue 1, next to PSG, of course. So the bar is that's your bar. They should have known that it was coming. Yes, I think they won 1-9 in the run of play that those guys have been playing, and I believe that it's one of those things where it shouldn't get to that point. Like there's whatever the sport is that you're playing, I don't think it should get to that point. Andres Villas-Boas, as you were saying, he's a good coach because to get to that point of being second, Marseille is one of those teams where they're the only French team to ever win Champions League. They always have that over PSG. So the bar is so high for the fans in Marseille that with technology, with the social media presence, it's kind of one of those things where if you're angry, it now gets magnified 1,000-fold because everybody is now feeding that anger. What do you think about the players or even the fans that are crossing the line? Do we think the players are even responsible? I know we're talking about the upper management, talking about Villas Boas, but what about the players? Shouldn't they be held accountable at some level?
We're going to reiterate that number one, it starts with the culture at the club and the ownership, and it's set out by that attitude. It's set out by their intentions. The players can only do what's on the pitch and what's on the training field. That you can't hold them much more responsible outside of normal accepted forms of conduct. We also, to Kevin's point of context, have to remember that Marseille as a city, number one, is a stunning place and has got to be a really attractive and beautiful place to live. It's a place that I'd be proud of if I lived there. Sorry for my lights. But it's also not a place that's new to protest, to strife, either social, economic, ethnic-based. They've had a lot of trouble with how they've handled the immigration into that part of France, to speak more broadly. And, you know, we're not going to extrapolate that and say that's exactly what's causing things. But what you can say is that there's a lot more different flashpoints, and that sometimes you could say, oh, it's just soccer, and sometimes it is soccer, but sometimes it isn't. And in this case, it's a bit of a perfect storm. To your broader question, no. The players, provided they keep within an acceptable and smart range of conduct, you really can't put a lot on them. At the same time, you got to wonder who's advising who in this kind of organization. When you're in crisis, you got to have smart people who know how to behave during crisis, who know how to put out the right kinds of communications, who know how to make sure you keep things tight, make sure you keep the behaviors right. So it's a tough call, but it's a bit of a mess.
Well, Aiden, to prove a counterpoint, when you're a historic club and a big club like Marseille in the French league, how often are you going to have the personnel or the advisors or the coaches that have handled a poor run of form? It's not something that often happens to these big clubs. If you're talking about a relegation zone team, then you've probably been through that ringer multiple times. But if you're a big club, you're not really expected to win one out of your last 10 fixtures. That's not something that will come inherently obvious to convey the message, and you might lose the dressing room pretty quickly if you're.
To be super sincere about the point, my club is no longer a big club, and the reason we are not a big club is the way that we handled the adversity. Every club is going to deal with things that are difficult. It's the ones that are truly big that keep coming up, competing, and coming up and competing. In some clubs, it takes a long time. I accept that as an Arsenal fan. But frankly, if you're going to say we're the number 2, number 3, or even a top 4 perennial in France, if you come across a rough run, you've got to figure it out. You got to figure it out on the pitch. You got to figure it out on the training ground. And you've got to show that you're truly big. Otherwise, like Arsenal, you become a mid-table team. And if you're not careful, and I don't know how censored we are, but if you fuck around, you'll find out. So that's where it's at.
And I think to touch on Ida's point, when Marseille in and of itself is a very divided city, it's almost forced segregated. So when you go into the city itself, I know that there's a lot of undercurrents there as well. So like Aiden said, part of it could be football, part of it obviously stems from issues outside of football. But what I will say is that under any circumstances, the players don't go out there trying to lose, right? They don't go out there trying to lose or however many out of the last games in a row. So to threaten them or to endanger them with violence is a step way too far.
Well, speaking of adversity, Marseille's next game is against PSG. So let's see how they handle that one. So let's jump over to our next topic. Let's staying in Ligue 1. We're talking about PSG. Those guys currently they are hanging out in third place, surprisingly, already playing 23 games. They are 3 points behind Lille, and in second place we have Lyon. Uh, Rohit, looking at the league table in France, do you think PSG can find a way to actually win the league?
I mean, it would be fool. It would be foolish for me to say they can't because the amount of talent and the amount of money that PSG has spent on that squad compared to Lille and Lyon. But hearing the comments that Neymar says about I'm not immature, but I'm also going to continue my partying habits. Hearing the Mbappe rumors of he's linked to Real Madrid or he's linked to Barcelona or he's linked to other prestigious clubs, and then you have the Messi rumors about is Messi going to go to PSG, and the whole COVID season where you have all these fixtures clumped together. So if you have one bad run of injury, you might have like Neymar. He's been prone to injuries in the past. If he misses 3 weeks, that could be 4 league matches, and they could just be out of the picture completely. So my head, I want to say they're not out of it, but it's really hard for me to say that with complete conviction at the moment.
KG, surely you disagree with Rohit.
Sadly enough, I don't know, man. I think part of the issue is with them is that they have a core of players that are just not reliable. You know, because if you really take a look at Neymar and you look at Mbappe and you look at their performances over, let's say, the last 3 years, it's been hot and cold. It's been hit or miss. It's been, one month Neymar is a world beater. The next month he's rolling around on the ground, taking six away at wherever. So it's like you can't really get a beat on these guys. And, you know, under normal circumstances, you would think adding what you consider, a top class manager would help them. But Pochettino, man, is not one. If you look at the volatility of his squads, even in the past, and how they blew hot and cold, and how they would consistently crack under pressure, I don't necessarily know if he's a guy who is going to come in and change the tide. So when stuff starts to go bad for him, I don't necessarily know if he's the coach who's going to steady the ship. And you throw two unpinned hand grenades into the situation with Mbappe and Neymar, and their personal volatility. Like, I mean, at any time when one of them says that they don't like Pochettino, he's done. He's finished.
Let me just interject with something quickly. I think I personally overlooked the impact that Thiago Silva had on the club as their leader in the back line, also as their captain. I thought his age I thought it was wise for them to move on, but I feel as if PSG really misses his presence in the dressing room, and because I feel as if he would corral the dressing room to not have these negative thoughts or to have poor runs of form.
Well, let me pull you in real quick. Today they did win their game against I don't want to mess it up. Names. My bad if I said it wrong. Mbappe scored. Angel Di Maria, but at the same time, back to KG's point, Pochettino is a new coach, and he's not the one for winning titles. Even though PSG has won Ligue 1 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, 2017, 2018, 2019. Do you take PSG or the field?
I don't know. It's a bit of a push. When you look at Pochettino, his expertise seems to be more coaching, less so management. And with a situation like PSG, where, and this is my perception, it's probably wrong, but it seems like the bigger egos, the bigger names, the bigger pay packets They're not there to be told no or to be told something different than what they think. And so the personalities that they push against are going to be the ones that get out. So you got to wonder, what is ownership's real priority? And again, this, speaking of ownership, goes back to when you have something that's basically treated like easy money, and let's get all the toys we can, forget about chemistry, let's just buy. This is what you get is, yeah, it can stumble into league titles in a frankly weak league, but when it comes down to it, they can't keep up with Europe's best. In terms of where they finished this season, they have the talent to finish first, and as long as it's not mathematically out of the question, you have to give them a fair chance to do it. Whether or not they do it, hard to say. On current form, I wouldn't take the bet.
Smart man. Well, they still have to. Well, PSG, they still have to play against Lille at home at PSG, and they have to play again away to Lyon. So I believe that they're definitely going to be able to recover that 3-point disadvantage that they have. But let's be realistic here, guys. They're not here. It's not about Ligue 1. Like, Neymar was bought to win, to not be the runner-up in Champions League, and that's what it's all about. Their next game is coming up. They have a game against Barcelona, which I guess we can transition over into them. They have been in the news a lot lately, and it's not necessarily for Messi scoring his 650th goal in his career. It's a little bit more complicated than that, because a few days ago, I think El Mundo is the name of the newspaper. They printed a story saying that Barcelona, they are $1.5 billion in debt. And they're saying that Messi is kind of pulling the club down because he has a $555 million for 4-year contract. KG, do you think the club is like trying to prepare the fans for life without Messi, or is there another hand at play here?
I want to give a shout out to all of the guys in the soccer family who were trying to tell me that Neymar was affordable for Manchester City, and when I told them no chance it's happening, this is why.
I feel like you need to call names. You can't just be so generic and vague. Shout out to
Nahom. Shout out to Nahom. Shout out to Alo. But one way or another, man, those numbers by any standards, like, I don't care what sport you're playing, I don't care what type of organization you're in, like, yeah, that's an anchor around their neck. I don't know how you can. That's like, let's say I'm starving, right? I'm starving, but I've got a 100-pound anchor around my neck. So, and you dump me in the middle of the ocean, right? I'm still hungry, right? So they still need Messi, but he's also that 110-pound anchor around their neck that's dragging them to the bottom too. So what are you gonna do? You gonna drown? Still hungry, because they're still hungry right now. Their roster is very, very old. It's aging, so they're not in a good spot to begin with. But Messi's that anchor around their neck. But there's not really. I mean, what can you do? Like, I mean, you either let go of the anchor. You're probably gonna die of hunger anyway. But hey, your choice is yours. They've been a very poorly managed club for a very, very, very long time. And if you look at, there's been no coherence in their transfer policy. And I think their biggest, I mean, the kind of the proof's in the pudding. It's been rumored behind the scenes that Messi runs Barcelona for quite some time. He dictates who comes, he dictates who goes. So if you look at the manner in which the club has been run, and you look at what they're paying him, how could you come to any other conclusion? So Messi made this mess, and now he's trying to jump ship. You know, and he's obviously not going to offer them any discounts either. So I don't know where they go after Messi. I don't know what they're in a lose situation.
I didn't. So there's been a lot of there's I guess there's good people on both sides to quote a great president. Um, Messi, has he really ruined the club though? Because he's a record goal scorer. He's won 10 La Liga titles, Champions League 4 times, Ballon d'Or 6 times. But before he went there, Barcelona only won 1 European Cup. Now that he's there, they won 5. So is he really the one that ruined the club, or is it just the way how the contract was written up?
It's probably neither. It's probably the fact that an organization like Barcelona has had a run of poor leadership and mismanagement farther back than most likely Leo Messi's arrival. Also have to remember, part of the shame of this is Barca, if I remember right, is in part a publicly operated club. It's a shareholder run club. And, it's a shame that I think basically a lot of the voting shareholders get duped into electing these idiots, and they run the club into the ground. To the point of, if Messi's really the one pulling the strings behind the scenes, maybe you'd have to think that at some point he'd get a couple of things right, especially with some of the bigger recent transfers. And for one reason or another, they haven't gelled. You could also argue that they could use a good coach or a good manager during this interim period when they've had a lot of fluctuation. So it's probably a lot of different things. The fact is that no other organization would be allowed to run or exist in this way. So whether some sort of large benefactor comes in and takes on that debt, I'd imagine the risk assessment there is going to be against the Barcelona brand, and guessing that over the long haul that there's enough revenue there to be had to take on a risk like that. The other thing is, and I don't know this, but what is the state of La Masia? What is the state of the young talent that they have coming up through the pipeline who can either be some of that on-pitch product that can show people that there is life after Messi, or in some cases, they've got product that they can put out there, get some La Liga experience or second league experience, and move them on, sell them for a profit, and rebuild that way. Either way, it's a huge project. I don't know what your guys' thoughts on it is. As a business challenge, it seems almost insurmountable when. And for one last thought, I don't care what the pay packet is that got leaked. The fact is that the guy is going to leave this summer on a free. He's going to go wherever he wants. So that's money that they spent. We can look back and say that was dumb in the past, but the fact is that that at this point they're 10 figures in debt at least. Who's going to take that note on? Who's going to float the cash that you need to be active in a transfer market? Because I think Kev said it, they are old and they need to rebuild. And frankly, I don't care, because I want them to suffer a little bit. But at the same time, that's a great club. And you want to see other things. Oh, and they need to rebuild that stadium. What the hell are they going to do?
They already took out a $500 million. They already took out a $500 million loan to $550 million loan to that's part of the reason why they don't have any money. That's why they're in so much debt.
Just like any other stadium, KG, that's going to balloon to triple or quadruple that by the time they open the doors for the first event.
If anyone would know, it would be the Arsenal fan from Highbury to Emirates.
Truly. But that's paid for itself.
Speaking of elected idiots, there's some rumor floating around about criminal investigation against the former president Josep Maria Bartomeu, the former VP Jordi Mestre, the CEO, and I think 2 or 3 other people involved in this leakage. That sounds weird.
Not with these guys. It's perfect.
Yeah.
Well, Rohit, what are your thoughts on the whole situation? Do you guys, where do you see it all heading?
So I got there. You made a comment about Messi being part of the 5 European Cups. I got to do a little pushback because 2006 I would consider more Ronaldinho's team then 2009 through 13, 12, the 2008 through 12. I mean, if you have in Spanish the national team of Spain midfield with Iniesta and Xavi feeding you the ball, I think you're going to be scoring. And Henri is there as well.
Henri.
I think you're in good hands. But I mean, Messi is a fantastic player. I'm not disputing that, but let's not give him the entire credit. He had a lot of benefactors, people that were giving him the service at that time. The Messi situation kind of reminds me, I know this is maybe too American-centric, but it reminds me of the Brady and the Patriots in the recent years, where what Brady was doing was taking those pay cuts consistently to build a team around him, and they kept winning those Super Bowls. Whereas Messi, in the opposite, has just been taking so much money because he's one of, if not the best player in the world with the 6 Ballon d'Ors. But because of that, Barcelona can't necessarily invest those funds into a back line that they desperately need, because if you're trotting out PK constantly at his advanced, he hasn't aged as gracefully as other center backs in the league or in the world. And then their midfield, I mean, Frankie de Jong is a good talent, but you're playing him out of position. So it's the Barcelona. I don't understand. I don't know what Barcelona is going to do. I mean, their youth academy. I mean, it was great when Pep was the head of was there, because he had the eye for that talent. But ever since Pep left, they've just been using his legacy to win those titles, and they had 2 marquee signings of Neymar and Suarez to carry them in the initial couple seasons. But since then, when they got older and they left, nothing's really happened for that.
KG, what do you think would have happened if so Neymar, he's off at PSG. Suarez, he could be rescuing the team right now, but he's busy scoring 2 goals against Cadiz in his league, leading Atletico Madrid. Do you think the way how Barcelona handled the business part of their organization, if they had handled that better, do you think they would have ride the goodbye Messi wave a little bit better?
No, because I mean, look at who you just mentioned. You mentioned Suarez. Suarez is aging. Like, I mean, so he's not going to be the long-term solution for them either. Let's take Liverpool, for example. Liverpool got less money for Coutinho than Barcelona did for Neymar. Look at how the 2 clubs reinvested that money, right? So they went out and they bought a Sadio. Well, they already had. I think, did they have Mane? Either way, they bought a Salah, they bought an Alisson, they bought a Van Dijk. Go ahead. What were you saying? Aiden?
They got Alisson and Van Dijk with that money, didn't they?
Right. Look who Barcelona has. Can you tell me who Barcelona has bought since they sold Neymar? Who De Jong and Martin Braithwaite. De Jong, Martin Braithwaite, and there's one. Griezmann.
Yeah.
Griezmann. Those are their 3 signings. So, I mean, that discrepancy in terms of money spent as a big club that has your choice of players in the world, like, yeah, they're a poorly run club in every faction. And to answer the question about their academy isn't where it was previously. I know they've got a large international pool of players, but La Masia isn't what it was it isn't what it was previously.
I feel like Barcelona's management is playing FIFA, and they think they can just get all the offensive attacking talent in the world and just put them into different places. Kind of like a certain Premier League team at Stamford Bridge, but
throwing shade. You okay? All right.
That's rich for an Everton fan, with you and your mismatched squad.
Yeah.
All right. Before we jump over,
bunch of misfits.
before we jump over to Premier League.
Manager who spent $250 million in the past summer.
on guys like Yerry Mina.
Hey, he has scored many goals somehow for us.
You fucking Yerry Mina.
Before we jump over Evertonian, before we jump over to La Liga, I guess one word answer. Does Barcelona come back and take the take back the La Liga title? Aiden?
No.
Rohit?
Hell no.
Damn. KG, I know you love Atletico.
Nope. Atletico's winning the league this year. I told y'all at the beginning of the season.
At the beginning of the season, you said that they're going to win Champions League. You say that every year. So let's
they may win it too.
Atletico has 2 matches in hand and they had a 7-point lead last time I checked in the
I think right now it's a 10-point advantage and they also have a game in hand. So
they may not win Champions League anymore because when they face us, they're not going to be at full strength. They had a COVID outbreak.
Yeah.
Oh, that sucks. Well, I hope they recover in time for the game so they can wax Chelsea. All right, moving over to England.
Not the waxing part.
Over to England.
Hold on.
Don't worry about it.
Out of all your 3 clubs, how many of you guys are after Champions League?
Touche. All right. So for Premier League, let's jump over there for a little bit. That's where we kind of spend a lot of time over there, but let's talk about Man City. Those guys are giving the Manchester United fans a headache, man. Will Man City lose another game for the rest of the season?
Yeah, they will. They'll lose another game, but it'll probably be the best game that opponent will have ever played. And I think City are going to run away with it this year.
Run away with it? What are you talking about? Manchester United is 3 points behind them. But let's not.
Manchester United are incredibly flaky. I don't care about a gaudy scoreline. That doesn't mean anything against a garbage team like Southampton in the first place.
That's the second time they've taken 9 in a year.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not special. And frankly, they're getting too many penalty calls that make them feel themselves. And I think Bruno Fernandes is effective as a player. Well, I don't want to jump the next subject.
I was about to say we're talking about Man City and how good they are, and somehow you see that's how the cream always rises to the top. Greatness is always recognized. That's just how it works. Rohit, they play the next game that they play is against Liverpool. They play on Sunday. How do you think the outcome of that game is going to be? City won today 2-0 against Burnley, and Liverpool lost at home. I don't remember who they played against.
Brighton.
Against Brighton, right. So what do you think the outcome would be for that game?
They have brilliant attacks, but if you look at the season, I think they've conceded the fewest goals. I think it's like 13 and 17 goals conceded. So their back lines have been phenomenal, which surprised me with Liverpool considering all the injuries they've had with Matip, Gomez, Van Dijk, obviously. But I would give the benefit to City. I would go 3-1 City. I think De Bruyne's class will show up in this match, and I don't know if Trent Alexander-Arnold nor Andy Robertson is going to have the opportunity to swing those crosses in. I think they're going to be pinned too far back in their own territory.
Yeah, Liverpool, they do have problems of their own. But Man City, they've won 13 games in a row. I think this is number 14. Unbeaten in the last 20. I think they lost to Tottenham 2-0 in November. And before that loss, they've only lost one time since September 30th. Like, that is the stretch that these guys are on right now. And I do agree that the upcoming game against Liverpool is a test, but they've conceded less goals. I think they've conceded 11 less goals at this point in the season as opposed to last season. but nothing has changed. Stones is playing out of his mind. But the goals are coming from, they're evenly distributed, considering that they don't really have a out and out striker outside of Gabriel Jesus. KG, what do you think about how City's performance is right now, and where do you think they're going to be going at the end of the season?
So first of all, I want to know the last couple of games where they've looked a little bit more fluid, 3 or 4 games where they've looked more fluid on offense and they've looked more of a threat going forward. Does anybody know what has changed, especially the last 3 or 4 games where it looks like their offense has clicked into form? There's somebody missing.
Are you going to say KDB missing? KG,
Yeah.
go sit down in the corner somewhere.
I just want to note City's best runs of form and their best, most beautiful football has come when Kevin De Bruyne has been out. If you go back to their last title run, the whole middle of the season through most of the second half of the season, KDB was out, and they didn't lose a game for about 6 months. And that's how they chased down Liverpool in their second title win. I don't know if you guys remember that, all without KDB. It looks like they've shored up their back. Go ahead. It looks like they've shored up their back line too. And like, I don't know, man. Like, I didn't think that we could see a more complete City than we saw 2 years ago. But this Ruben Diaz is as good as advertised, and I mean, we know the attacking talent they have, and they're in that Pep system, and with the games being quick turnarounds every game, those guys are well versed in what it is he's asking them to do. So I just like I said, I think this is going to end up being a runaway for City.
I didn't. When KG mentioned KDB being out, and that's when they have their best run of form, and you were you were shaking your head in approval. Are you agreeing with KG that KDB is a liability on Man City?
I was agreeing with the part of it that was about the beauty of the football they're playing. If you're taking out that traditional focal point and there's a little bit more load sharing, player for player, City are such an excellent team that if you give them a combination of that openness and there really isn't that focal point, or kind of maybe this goes towards that broader conversation of the shift away from the traditional number 10 and kind of expecting more pressing out of everybody. But then again, Kevin De Bruyne had never played really. I never thought he was someone who shirked the press. He seems like a pretty hard worker to me when he's in there. But maybe the aspect of the focal point of the offense, or rather being that engine room, if you remove that and everybody is taking on that extra percentage, you've got the quality player for player to pull it off, and maybe that's what we're seeing.
Rohit, please tell me you disagree with this.
I do, because if you look at their last 4 matches, they've played Burnley, West Brom, and Sheffield United, which are 17th, 18th, and 20th in the standings at the moment. So it's not as if City have necessarily been...
Last season, those were the teams that they were dropping points against. Yeah, Sheffield United took points off of them last season, and they were very close to taking points off of them in this last game too.
Sheffield United last year had the defensive structure that confused a lot of teams initially, because it was a very unique structure that their manager was implementing. Now, given the offseason, given the break in the window to study that structure, Sheffield United, I feel like, have been exposed, and the standings reflect that. Well, exposed for most teams. United is completely different, but KDB, I can't. I'm just at a loss for words. I think he's such a world-class player that I don't necessarily like to give credit to Manchester City, but or Kevin De Bruyne, because I think sometimes he's a little too pouty. But yeah, I understand what you both Aiden and KG's trying to say, but I just disagree with it.
And even with his injuries, I think he still has the highest assists in City.
In City.
Harry
Yeah,
Kane?
but I mean, he's their focal point.
Oh, it's City.
Okay, just want to make sure that you admit at least that part. All right. So like Sesame Street, there's a number of the week, and the number of the week is 9. Manchester United gave Sheffield 9. Gave Southampton 9. Arsenal, they ended up playing with 9 players. Southampton ended up playing with 9 players. I feel like Chelsea might get 9 tomorrow. I didn't. Can we give Manchester United some credit just before we move on to the Arsenal, to the red card incident? We're going to talk about that and the what's his name again? The defender that got the red card against Budnerek, him and David Luiz. We're going to talk about them in a minute, but can we give Ole some kind of credit?
Yes. Yes, you can. Look, you have, again, Ole is trying to find the sweet blend between coaching and management. And I think the form recently and any of that belief, which they should get rid of because United has no chance at the title, but any of that form and belief is simply a product of Ole getting better at management. If you have a happy Paul Pogba, if you have a happy Anthony Martial, if you are keeping some of that high-end talent producing, if Rashford can get back into a good vein of form as well, that's a big thing. But no, they deserve credit. They're not the finished article, and they also, as a club, deserve a lot of hatred for how long it's taken since Sir Alex, because they totally botched that transition and hurt David Moyes' career and everybody else's, but that's a different story.
Shout out to David Moyes, by the way. He picked up Lingardinho, and Lingardinho scored 2 goals today. But Rohit, I know that you're also not the biggest fan of Manchester United, but the whole analysis of this game is probably a little bit skewed because they started out the game 1 man down in 90 seconds, so it's a little bit it's a little bit hard to kind of analyze this game. But Southampton, man, like, this is what's going on, like, where do they go from here? This is the second 9-0 that they've had in like 14 months, I think. That one was against Leicester, and I think the coach was saying that this one is a little bit worse. Budnerek scored a penalty, and he got a red card, and he scored an own goal. So that's a hat trick for him. Like, where does Southampton go from here?
Your guess is as good as mine. I mean, you could ask that for a lot of these mid-table clubs because they're. I honestly don't know. I mean, 9-0. That's to happen once. Okay, I can understand once that it's pretty embarrassing, but big clubs have had that before, like Barcelona, Bayern last year, 8-2. You see this every once in a while, but to happen twice in back-to-back seasons, at some point, I feel like the team itself has to start questioning their belief. What do they go to? Is the management right? What direction do they have the right tactics? Because you can't get embarrassed 9-0 in the Premier League. I'm sorry. At some point, just put everyone behind the ball. Don't do it. Just acknowledge that you're not going to get any points away. And the moment you're down 2 or 3, 4-0, you're just take the L. But don't make it even worse, because at the end of the day, because the whole way the financial system works, because you want what position you finish in the Premier League, the more money you get from the Premier League TV rights. When you're mid-table, that goal differential does have an effect if you end up on level points with another team. So being down 9 points can bite you in the ass towards the end of the year. So I don't know where they go from here.
You want to jump in?
Maybe it's the sympathy of having endured an 8-2 humiliation against United in, what was that, 2011? I want to say 2011.
Yeah, you're right. It's 2011.
And so, look,
And you're 6-0.
yeah. We're too fluent with these things. And the fact is that even in those cases, look, it's fine margins, but sometimes the avalanche can happen too. And it's not necessarily cause for a major autopsy. If it happened twice in the course of a season, fine. Twice in the course of a calendar period of time, I think is just more sensationalist and less relevant. It can happen. United is full of quality. Frankly, a team like Southampton has been playing better than they are on paper for a while now. So the idea that they get exposed somewhat is not crazy. At the same time, there is a kind of a professional pride that somehow got rolled over. So all to say, I have respect for it. I have empathy for it, but it is all sorts of unacceptable. I don't deny that.
Okay. Let's jump from 1-9 over to, well, let's jump from 2 9s over to another 9 and kind of tie that in. Arsenal, they ended up playing with 9 men. Oh, just also to point out, Aiden, Southampton is 12th and they are on 29 points, and Arsenal is on 31 points. So if they happened to beat Man U that game, they would have actually leapfrogged Arsenal. So even though we're also feeling so sorry for Southampton, if they had gotten that W, Arsenal would be in big trouble. But two interesting things happened that we in the soccer family group had a very passionate discussion about. The red card against Budnarek on Tony Marshall, and the red card against David Luiz. I don't remember. Was it Neto? I don't remember who it was on the Wolves team. KG, were those a foul, and were they red card offenses?
Listen, the rules are the rules. Everybody plays by the same rules, and sometimes the ball bounces your way, sometimes it doesn't. David Luiz is being David Luiz, doing David
Agent
Luiz
Luiz. Double agent.
doing David Luiz things. Go back and I'll tell you guys this from his Chelsea days. Whenever he's chasing behind, he does this thing where he cuts across the back of the defenders and he does this little hop, right? Pay attention next time. And every single time he does it, it puts my heart in my throat because I'm like, you know it's a red card. You know it's a 100% red card. I don't know how this is a debate, why this is a debate, when this became a debate, but the rule specifically says if there is no man between the last man and the ball, and you do not make an attempt for the ball, it is an automatic red card. Tell Sideshow Bob to slow his ass down, and then maybe he would have an argument. But he didn't even argue himself. So why are we arguing for a man that's not even defending himself?
You know what the funny thing is, KG?
He just walked off the pitch.
I'm supposed to be I'm gonna be neutral here because I'm supposed to be hosting, but it seems like, just from a neutral perspective, it seems like the only group of people that do not accept this red card are players, are fans that have, let's say, for example, a golden Arsenal jersey with Henry in the back. You know, like, those are the people that actually believe that this was not a red card. I didn't. What are your thoughts on the whole situation? Do you think the David Luiz sideshow was a red card, or do you think it was too harsh?
It's because Kevin is correct, and we know who David Luiz is. We know the kind of player that we're talking about. We know all these things, that when it's not that, we have to call it out. Look, if I'm someone who, when I'm driving, smashes and rear ends people all the time, and I call and I tell you I got in a car accident and this time I got rear-ended, it wasn't my fault this time. And it's the same kind of deal with David Luiz. I know what Kevin's talking about with the trail behind and the hop over, acting like it's all innocuous and just getting behind the player. if you watch the movement in this play, all the man did was reduce his speed, and the other player's trailing ankle found his knee, and he felt the contact and crumbled. And so, fine. Let's say it's a foul. Let's say it's a penalty. The double jeopardy of it is really unfair. I know that they have adjusted the laws to try to address that, but the game is so beautiful that it finds wrinkles that we didn't think of, so this was one to think about. It's not objectively a good call, unlike the Leno call, which is a no-brainer. And frankly, there's a bunch of other calls that you can say that even if it doesn't help your team or if it's for the other team, you've got to call it as it is. This Luiz red card and penalty combo just seemed really unreasonable and kind of a harsh interpretation. And frankly, that referee in that game had a handful of really silly minor mistake calls that he got really crispy about when confronted by players. And it was just very strange. And I normally don't like to get in on the refs too much because it's such an impossible job, but it was not good. That's really it. And frankly, that game was there for Arsenal to win because the first 44 minutes of that, I think, were the best football I've seen from this season at least. And that was really nice to see. And, you know, we're still missing some guys. So, you know, all in all, it was fine because it evens out. But if you're isolating the conversation, that was harsh on Luiz.
Leave it up to the Arsenal man to find the silver lining in the David Luiz clown car driving.
And I also want to say to some of the other soccer family members that I warned you guys when you signed David Luiz that this is what you would get.
Rohit, what is your?
I can't talk about David Luiz when I have Yerry Mina on my squad. Okay, so I can't say shit.
Well, based on what you saw, like, do you think it was too harsh? Do you think it was deserved? Because it was a clear goal scoring opportunity. The last defender, based on the rule, like that's how it's supposed to go. And then, what do you think?
I mean, based on the rule, I mean, all you have to say is the last defender, and based on the rule, that's for me, that's pretty. It's not cut and dry, but with the way the laws are written in the sport, you're gonna be sent off, and that's. I think a lot of people are just frustrated, not with the sending off, just the inconsistency with VAR throughout this whole Premier League season, where certain teams seem to be benefiting more compared to other teams. And I think that might be one of the reasons why Aiden's complaining about this, because there's probably been instances, not in the Wolves match per se, but earlier in the season where there might have been a moment where VAR probably should have overturned it or given a penalty or given a red card offense, but it didn't go their way. I just think that this whole season's really exposed a lot of inconsistencies that has been very eyebrow raising.
KG, what's the issue here? Based on what you guys are talking about, it seems like we need to kind of discuss this a little bit. What is the issue? The referees, VAR, or the interpretation of the laws that we have in the Premier League?
I think the problem with the laws is that the laws don't match the technology that we have to review the game, right? So, but at the same time, I think in this particular case, we're grasping for straws. The rule, there is a set rule for this exact circumstance that says if X happens, if A happens, B must happen, right? So if a guy is through on goal and he goes down from contact from a player that does not attempt to play the ball, he gets a red card. I don't understand what is so hard to understand about that. But I'll say this, beyond the rules, beyond that particular rule, I think, the implementation of VAR, they need to standardize it because we've seen it implemented in Germany. We see it implemented in the MLS, and they don't have the same issues on a week-by-week basis as the Premier League. So, I think that's part of the issues that the Premier League has their own set of rules and the way that they implement VAR that's leading to a lot of this chaos.
Aiden, do you agree with that?
Yeah, that's a brilliant point. Look, the challenge with VAR, I think, in the Premier League context, is they're starting to make it personal. These errors are human, but when you have other people who are reviewing this content and everybody can see that there was a mistake made, and all you got to do to get it right is to reverse the call on the field, go ahead and do it. They don't have to feel like there's some sort of thin blue line personal allegiance among the legion of referees, shoulder to shoulder, strong against the stampeding hordes. Like, no, just get it right. Just get it right. So if there was like a, almost a kind of a global service of ISO 9001 or similarly qualified, approved VAR operators, that just like when the English referees referee an international match in a non-English speaking country, and they make sure that there's enough contrast in the interests that it's not about favoritism and it's not about saving the blushes of the center referee, then you might be getting somewhere, because the technology is brilliant. The technology can afford us really good calls, but number one, the guys that are using it are dinosaurs, obviously. Like, what are you doing? Like, you can eyeball half of the stuff just on regular slow-mo. Then if you get the extra tasty, crispy camera, like, it's within seconds you should know what you're looking at. And then the second part, if you take out that personalization and you not make it about damn Mike Dean every week in, week out, because he has to make it about himself, then you might get somewhere.
So one thing that I don't remember where or when I saw it, but in Bundesliga, I think it is, the referees actually come out after the games, and like they actually have a press conference where they discuss calls that they make. I think that would clear up a lot of clout and a lot of misunderstanding that the referees, VAR, and even the interpretations have in England. And
So you're
also,
talking about the final 2 minutes in the NBA?
That's also a culture thing, though, I feel like, because I feel like Germany, it's very much, there's a sense of, not honor, but it's just accepted that you admit your faults and you own up to your faults. Whereas England, it's very much, I mean, look at the whole England national setup and the setup. They will always find an excuse for their, yeah, that.
well, England, they're very stubborn. They don't like spice, but it's just what they do.
Hey, they had the spice. Come on now.
It's February, so it's February 3rd. One thing that's happened between the last podcast that we recorded and this one, the January transfer window, it's now shut down. I'm not sure if Arsenal made any moves this season, but I realized that there's been a lot of loans going on in this transfer window. Like, what do you think is one the reasons why this is happening?
This was probably the best winter window that I've seen from Arsenal, and certainly from Edu, in the following context. He got rid of a lot of salary that was weighing down the club on conversations that were just not healthy or conducive to what you think Arteta is trying to do. They loaned out English players that will always carry a premium if you can make sure they get some English minutes under their belt when they're being loaned, or somewhere else, even on the mainland, where they're going to get a lot of playing time, and they're always going to command a great price if you do decide to move them on. And something like Ødegaard, just to make sure that in case you lose Emile Smith-Rowe, or in case you need someone to kind of add a little extra spark at kind of that hybrid 10 role. It's, you know what's crazy, just as an aside? You can now really understand what Mesut Özil was not willing to do. When you see how Arteta is setting out the team and what he's asking the guys who are filling that creative role to do, Özil was not interested in pressing. Okay, so be it. And when you look at a lot of the other guys that he's moved on, that's what it comes down to. That's where the game is right now. I think it was a really good window for them. The trouble they might have screwed themselves is they've set a decent expectation now. So they need to do some really smart business in the summer. Because you know what? If Tuchel does something nice for Chelsea, they're going to give him whatever the hell he wants. Your guys, are going to get whatever they want. Rohit, your guys are actually going to have some dollars to spend because they're the worst oligarchs of them all, quietly, quite frankly. So, there's going to be some movement, so they got to take advantage. Otherwise, I'm happy. The only thing is we're getting closer to fourth place being mathematically impossible, and I hate having the pressure of trying to win the Europa to get into the Champions League. It's too much maybe, but we'll see.
KG, one of the big moves that Chelsea made in the transfer window is actually not a player, but getting rid of Frank Lampard. So we don't have much to talk about there. But Liverpool, they actually turned to the Championship and Bundesliga. They tried to bolster their injury-hit defense. They added Ben Davis, which many consider to be a surprise move, and even Ozan Kabak. So a lot happened in the transfer window. What club do you think made a good or bad movements up and down the table? Oh, and also there's Lingardinho. Let's not forget that.
Okay, so I wanted to touch on Aiden's Arsenal comments really quickly. So I think it's very, very interesting what Arsenal did in terms of what they did in the transfer window. I think that they were probably 6 months too late, because the issue is, and what they've done is that the money that they've just gotten off the books, they've already reallocated that money. So if you look at a contract like Ozil, they just re-upped Aubameyang, and based on performances this season, I mean, you could kind of say that's looking like it's going in a very similar direction. They just gave out Willie another huge contract. That is another big contract on the books. They signed Thomas Partey. He's been injury hit so far. Looks to be a quality player, but can he stay healthy with the struggles of the Premier League? He's their third highest earner. So I understand what they did in terms of getting players off the books, but I feel like, Arsenal fans are expecting them to kick on, but if history tells us anything in terms of the way that Arsenal operate as a club, it's generally not going to be the case. They cut corners to keep their head above water, and as long as they're at that point, I don't necessarily think that they're going to kick on. And so, for all things considered, I would say they had an average transfer window. Better than most during these COVID times, but I just wanted to add my 2 cents into Eden's points, just because I felt like he was a little bit too rosy on what they actually accomplished.
Get him. Okay, so let's jump over to Rohit. What are your thoughts on the transfer window, and who do you think did good and who do you think did not so well?
Well, I mean, I think Arsenal just getting rid of the Ozil contract, even if it's 6 months too late, that you have to count that as a win. He was doing nothing he was just taking money off them. And I personally am a big fan of Martin Odegaard, so I'm happy to see him get some playing time and see what he can do. I think Liverpool, as much as it pains me to say this, I think they had a pretty solid transfer window. There wasn't as much action as I would personally have liked to see, but because of COVID and a lot of teams are struggling financially, I'm not surprised by this. But I would say Arsenal and Liverpool definitely had probably the better of the two windows in the Premier League. In terms of, am I allowed to say a loser as well, or should I hold off on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
So loser's not a club, but it's more of a player. Man, Dele Alli, he was told he was going to go to PSG, and then
they said change his mind.
And then Mourinho goes, "Yeah, no, we're not. That's not happening." My God, doesn't get any playing time. He's lost all his confidence, all his swagger, and where the hell is he supposed to go?
I think that's a Daniel Levy. I think that's a Daniel Levy move. I think he's hedging his bets in case Mourinho doesn't make it to the end of the season.
Ooh.
If Mourinho wins the FA Cup, could Tottenham sack him because they haven't won a trophy?
You mean he's in the
in.
Carabao Cup final?
That's
Wait, say that again, KG.
He's in the Carabao Cup final.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's like next week or 2 weeks.
I think it's. I can look it up.
Yeah, we're gonna have to look it up. I didn't go ahead.
Yeah, no, Tottenham's not going to win any trophies.
So do you think Jose is gonna get sacked if they don't win any trophies, and then Dele Alli can go back to his former glory?
I mean, it's hard to say because, frankly, between Gareth Bale, I don't know. I used to have a different feeling on the shrewdness of Daniel Levy. And then there came like a weird romance that came out of the Mourinho deal, out of bringing Gareth Bale back. It doesn't seem like he has the same kind of ruthlessness. And at the moment, you can't pull off. The market is still going to be very hot in the summer, no matter what anyone says, because a lot of teams are going to be looking to move a lot of talent on and to bring on new people. There is a chance that he removes Mourinho because he's annoying, but I don't think it will be an outcome-based remove. It'll be personal.
Okay.
Just to say, the Carabao Cup final is actually April 25th, so it's a ways away.
Oh, they moved it back, huh? So Bale might be back. Huh.
Yeah.
Who knows if he's gonna play?
Yeah. Get injured again before that match.
Yeah.
Happens.
So I got I guess 3 things to put before we finish up. Last year in the transfer window in the Premier League they spent 230 million. This year in the January transfer window they spent 70. So this is what COVID is doing to the team. Everybody has to be a little bit more aware of how they're spending their money. There's also the this Brexit rule about acquiring overseas players. I think that's also a contributing factor. And the biggest deal completed was Manchester United's purchase of Amad Diallo. Just so you guys know. With that said, our family time has come to an end. Thank you guys for joining us. Thank you, Aiden. Thank you, Rohit. And thank you, KG. I'm the guy that asked a lot of questions today. Please leave your thoughts, suggestions, and feedback, any corrections that you have in the comment section below. For all things Soccer Family, just check us out on thesoccerfam.com where you can find our podcast, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, email, and the works. Help support and subscribe to our project for as little as $1 a month to get exclusive content and be a part of our family. Oh, shout out to Aiden. He's a part of our family as well. We're looking forward to hearing what you have to say. I hope I get to see you guys at the next family reunion. Little more. Peace.